Hey guys, so I am making another video about the Auxiliaris program because some people have been asking me questions about like what my duties were at school and like how I got to school and things like that. So this is just going to be a quick video talking about those things. So let's get right into it. So first things first, let's talk about my class schedule. I only had to go to school Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which meant that I had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, which was really nice. I only went to London once with my roommate Nikki, and we went to Girona for a day, just as a quick day trip. But I didn't really do a lot of traveling because I didn't have a lot of extra money, and also I wasn't doing private tutoring lessons because I mentioned in my previous video that I did not enjoy teaching, so doing private lessons was not something that I was gonna do. It was something that I had planned to do prior to coming to Barcelona, but because I didn't like the planning of it, I didn't feel qualified to tutor, so I didn't. So I really was not making any sort of extra income at all, so that's why my weekends were kind of boring. I went out to a few bars, or sometimes I went to like razzmatazz or whatever, but that's basically how my weeks looked. I went to school and I hung out with a couple of friends, and then I just like chilled for the most part on the weekends. So the classes that I helped teach, I had two 5th grade classes, A and B. They were just learning English. They were probably the most horrendous students I had, just like the worst behaved, very disrespectful to the teacher. I just like was really uncomfortable a lot of the time being in that class because like they thought the class was a joke. They had no respect for their, regular teacher, let alone me. And it was just really awful, honestly. That was like the only class where I always dreaded going in because I just knew that it was going to be a lot of screaming on like the teacher's part. She would like be screaming at the top of her lungs for them to be quiet, and they were just like super rowdy and were not interested in learning at all, and that's like really difficult to deal with, especially when you're not trained. So that was very challenging, but besides that, I also taught two 1st grade classes, and they were amazing. They were so adorable, always like excited to see me, but their classes were kind of more like game based and craft based rather than learning grammar. Like they would have a unit on like toys, and they would learn words like ball, doll, bicycle, and things like that, and then they would just like draw pictures of those things and like write out the word. They weren't learning like, oh, I go to the park with my bicycle, or things like that. And then I also helped teach a kindergarten class, and that was very much the same, if not more so heavy on the game factor on teaching. So basically that teacher would pull up a bunch of YouTube videos of like songs and dancing games, and we watched a lot of those. They sang along, or there was like an online interactive program that they had on the computer. I really didn't do much. I just kind of like sat there, to be honest. And then I also helped with one 2nd grade class, very similar to the 1st grade class, and then my main job was helping with PE, and that was with 6th grade. Also 2 classes, and that was really bizarre because I had no idea I was going to help teach PE, but it was kind of fun. Basically PE was taught in English, and so we had different units. Like there was a racquetball unit and there was a handball unit, and then right when I was leaving they were starting a baseball unit. So they would just like learn the rules to these games, and then they would play matches with each other, and then for warm-ups they would like do various tag games and I don't know, like other warm-up games that kind of like tested the coordination you would need to whatever like unit you were doing. And then I had a 1-hour coordination meeting with my coordinator, and she was the PE instructor. So that was on Wednesdays. We would meet halfway through the day, and then she would just tell me whatever like lesson plans she was coming up with, and like what the next units were, and like what games she was planning on doing with the students, and basically that was basically it. Super simple and really easy. And yeah, so it's kind of like how school was set up because it was a primary school. School started at 9 and ended at 4:30. And they also have a very long break for lunch in addition to having like a half an hour break for breakfast. So even though I only would have like 3 classes on Tuesdays, I would be at school for the whole school day just because I would have to go to class, and then after the first class there would be a half an hour break for breakfast, and then that's when all the teachers that kind of chill in the teachers lounge, like eating their own breakfast and having coffee, and then go back and teach another class, and then it would be lunchtime, and lunch was like an hour and a half long, and it was just Spanish schedules. But that's kind of how school was. It was really chill. Teachers were really nice, my coordinator was really nice. The only downside was that sometimes I would just be in the teachers lounge during breaks and stuff, and teachers would be speaking in Catalan, which I don't speak, and it felt very like exclusive, and they could have been speaking in Spanish and I could have had more to contribute to the conversation, instead of looking like I was antisocial or something. I did try and take Catalan classes, however that was very poorly organized through the ministry once again. So a little bit after the program had started at the beginning of the fall semester, they sent out an email saying, hey, whoever's interested in signing up for Catalan classes, like this is the link, sign up as soon as possible so we can send out the schedule and things like that. I did that very promptly, and then when they sent out the schedule for the classes had already started like 3 or 2 weeks prior, and the classes were twice a week. So Nikki and I showed up to the class like the 3rd weekend or something, and we were so behind. There was just no way we were gonna catch up because the classes were twice a week and they were like an hour and a half. So we were several hours behind in class, and there was just no way we could have like caught up on our own and then been fine for the rest of class. And luckily the class was free, but it was just like a very big disappointment, and I had no idea like why they would have us start the class so far into the session and not let us know like when the class initially started. That just like made no sense, because they made it virtually impossible for anyone to learn at the appropriate pace. So that was kind of obnoxious, but whatever. I mentioned earlier that my commute to school was super easy. I was buying the 3-month youth Metro card, which costs about 90 or 100 euros or something like that. It's not horrendously expensive, but like in one chunk it's kind of like, ugh, here is a lot of money. And you can buy those like at the ticketing machines in metro stops. Not a big deal, super easy to get. Salary and payday. So we got paid 700 euros every month. However, there was never like, oh, we get paid on the 5th of every month and that is to be expected and that is, you know, what we can look forward to. The first month we were paid like a week and a half into the month, and then that was just basically the norm. There's also a giant WhatsApp group, and everyone would always be like, has anyone gotten paid yet? Like, who's gotten paid? And it was really annoying because like you would know if someone got paid. Someone would be like, hey guys, I got paid. And different banks, I guess, had different days when they would process the direct deposit and have it available in your account. So I had CaixaBank, and I was always paid like about a week into the month, and the only time we got paid early was for the month of December. We got paid before December was even over, and then back to the same old story, getting paid late, which is really inconvenient because like if you live somewhere and your landlord wants you to pay rent on the 1st, you have to like make sure you have like your funds organized in order to be able to do that, because you're not going to get paid on time to use that current paycheck to pay your rent. So something to consider when going into this program. And that's basically how I lived in Spain for the most part. Any more questions, just let me know, but it's been really awesome. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.